The mobile games of music, marching bands have brought us entertainment through the halls of public schools for years, and their many performances have crafted memories upon memories to be forgotten the next night. They're like the musical equivalent of a drunken blackout. This got me curious as to why marching bands exist and where they came from, because let's be honest, no one just sat down and said, "Let's have a crapload of students at school play instruments together, but then, and here's the kicker, we have them walking forwards at the same time." So, here is an in-depth description of the history and evolution of marching bands, the one video that is in the highest demand on the internet. It turns out that percussion and wind instruments have been performed in battles since 200 BC. There was an Iron Age instrument called the Carnix, that was a weird steel didgeridoo, and it was used by Celts. I meant to say Celts. Then, the first official military band of multiple people were from the Ottomans around the 11th to 13th century. Wow, that's a long-lasting marching band. Following this, Europe started having official bands starting from around 1700 to 1740. So, it apparently took 600 years for Europe to figure out that they could have a part of the military making music during the fight. You would think that with the amount of wars that Europe has started, they would have learned to introduce a soundtrack to it sooner. Apparently, military bands started off as civilians before the governments realized that they were wasting colonels training band members instead of soldiers. So the obvious answer was to hire a musical instructor instead of using a commanding officer for this sort of thing. I say obvious answer because they did something completely different. Instead of hiring a musical instructor to stop the waste of military personnel on training the band, they decided to spend even more military personnel to make up the band. So out with the civilian and in with the soldier. And it would seem that soldiers who were part of the bands were also stretcher carriers for the injured. I wonder if it would mess up the song, needing to take your instrument down and pick up a soldier, or would they have to finish the song before helping? Imagine that happening today, where a soldier is injured and they scream for a medic, and the medic just goes, Yeah, wait a second, kid. I'll get to you in a minute, I just need to finish my song. Anyway, here's Wonderwall. I'm just thinking about a giant music festival where the band is playing on stage and then someone in the audience trips and hurts their ankles, and the singers just spontaneously change into medic clothes and put the person in an ambulance, all while singing their song. The oldest American college marching band is from the University of Notre Dame, or Notre Dame, as Americans have no idea how to speak French. The band was called, and this is not a joke, the Band of the Fighting Irish. Well, that's just lovely. It was founded in 1845 and did its first football performance in 1887. That's right, the oldest marching band in America did their first marching band set during a football game 42 years after they were founded. Damn, I guess college kids really do like to procrastinate. To do more research into their performances, because there is no way they did nothing before that football performance 42 years in, I looked up the Wikipedia article, and no joke, it says this line about the band. It is strongly rumored to have had a clarinet player. Strongly rumored. You don't know? You don't know if they had a clarinet? Why were there no records of instruments in the 1800s? Also, why did they include this line as if it was some sort of conspiracy? Seriously, they didn't include this line for any other instrument, just rumored to have a clarinet player. Not suspected. It wasn't suspected to have a clarinet player. It was rumored, as if people were talking about it around the water cooler. Hey, you heard about that Notre Dame marching band? I heard they have a clarinet player. No way. I don't believe it. Fake news. So it turns out marching bands didn't actually play for football games for quite a while. Instead, they were mostly used for graduation. Nothing says go off into the endless sea of debt with that theater degree like a rousing performance of Mambo No. 5. The most iconic move of marching bands is the whole turn into a letter shtick. Personally, I don't see the fascination. Great, 100 people just formed the letter B. Guess what? The village people knew how to make letters out of people and they only needed one person each. The original letter formation was a performance by the Purdue University All-American Marching Band. Their coach, Paul Spots Emrick, no, not Emrick, Emrick, saw a bunch of birds flying in a V formation, and thought, let's plagiarize. So since then, marching bands have been performing the rigorous task of standing in the shape of a letter. Truly an Olympic-level sport. I don't mean to disrespect marching bands. I'm just taking the piss. I have absolutely no clue how much they rehearse, so for all I know it could be a One Punch Man level of workout every day. The good old One Punch Band. Truly a master of comedy, I am. The first ever halftime fight was by the University of Illinois Marching Illini. Illini? Alright. Wait, if they weren't performing at halftime, when were they performing? Before or after the game? Or maybe during it, like that scene in Spider-Man Far From Home, when all the marching band just come in the middle of a basketball game. Just football players dodging around trombonists and drummers. After World War I, the interest and funding for marching bands increased dramatically, and several former military band teachers started taking teaching positions, and then competitions started happening. Starting in Chicago, Illinois, home state of the Illini, ever since then, marching bands have been roughly what they are now. Now that we know their origin, I was curious as to what instruments they allowed in a marching band. Would they just have someone rocking the guitar in the background? Turns out a marching band is broken into sections. There's one you've probably heard of, the brass section, with things like horns, tubas, and trombones. Then there is the marching percussion. I'm pretty sure they're all marching, it's a marching band. If not everyone in a marching band marches, then I think they need a new name. Also, why not call it the percussion section? Why is the word section only in the brass section? The more I read about marching bands, the more confused I am. Then, there is the front ensemble. Oh, come on! Now we got ensemble as the term. We have the brass section, the marching percussion, and the front ensemble. This is worse than the Voltron colors not matching. Anyways, the front ensemble has... Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Alright, let's take a breath. The front ensemble contains... timpani, cowbells, claves, marimbas, griros, I don't know how to pronounce that, and chimes, tubular bells, woodblocks, vibraphones, that's not a concerning of a name at all, timbales, tambourines, maracas, congas, concert bass drums, xylophones, bongos, and gongs, as well as the occasional electric guitar, bass guitar, and keyboards. I'm starting to realize why we forget band performances. True fact, when I was looking up marching band sticks, it auto-corrected to marching bands are stupid. So I'm clearly not the only one who's getting a little grumpy. Anyways, it turns out that baton, not stick, twirling is still a thing in marching bands. How in the literal New Hampshire does spinning a stick add to music? Also, the audience is so far away in the stands that they probably can't even see it. Apparently, people who twirl for bands are called majorettes. Is that supposed to be a female version of major? I didn't realize major was a male-exclusive term. I'm kidding, obviously, but it just adds to the oddity of the term majorette. Did the person who came up with that believe that they were captainellas, she-sergeants, lieutenants? Wait, that one's basically the real thing, never mind. The dumb hats. It turns out that the type of hat that marching bands wear is called the SHAKO hat, which sounds like a term that may or may not have been colonized out of Eastern culture, because a SHAKO doesn't exactly sound like a Texas steakhouse dish. Oh, and it turns out that another type of marching band hat is called an Aussie. Awesome. So these hats have straps on the lips, which is obviously the next fashion craze of 2020. Let's face it, the year has faced worse things. Anyway, the reason why the straps are on the lips is because soldiers who wore helmets feared that the chin straps would break their necks if the helmet was shot, because instead of the helmet being blown off, it would pull the neck away and snap it. So that's a somber note to end on. The neck-breaking origins of classic marching band headwear. But there is not and will never be a smooth segue involving marching bands. So, bye.